Okay, today we're going to take a break from fractions and look at how do we combine polynomials. And the key here when we're adding and subtracting, on your notes again, the key will be combine like terms. So like terms, remember what like terms are? Terms that look alike. So I'll try to use my marker as far as identifying what terms look alike, and you can do the same kind of thing with either a highlighter or a different colored pen. But if I look at my polynomial here, we call this a binomial and a binomial. Be a careful reader. When I mix these all up, we'll have add, subtract, multiply, and you'll have to know what operation to use. But basically, you can see we are adding. So the rules for adding polynomials are add like terms. So are there any terms that look alike in these two equations? So I see a cubed and a cubed look alike. We talked about how do we take care of exponents, but when we're adding like terms, think of this as we have 3 of these and 2 of these, so that would end up with 5 of those. And are there any other terms that look alike? This -2 and this -6 look alike to me, so we combine those and make it a -8. So when we're looking at problems that are polynomials, again, this is a binomial and a binomial. We don't do anything with the powers because we're adding, but when we look at like terms, these terms look alike to me. So a -7, -7x minus a 7x, be careful, -7x minus 7x is the same thing as adding a negative, so this will give us -14x. Combining terms, we're taking a 7, but then we're subtracting off an 8. So be careful when you're subtracting. 7 minus 8 is equal to -1. So when we're looking at polynomials, again, as we get into what's called a trinomial plus a binomial, if we're adding, our rules are still just combine like terms. And terms are terms, like terms are terms that look alike. So again, I'll use my color scheme. This r cubed looks like this r cubed. I'm a careful reader, and I notice that this is a plus, so I'm going to combine these. So 6r cubed and 5r cubed will be 11r cubed. When I look at my next term, there's a 6 that looks like a number only, so 6 and the -2 are alike, and that would be a +4 if I add those two together. And then I'm just left with an r, and I see there's no other r's over here, so I would just copy that down. Now, usually in final answers, you'll have things in standard form, which means that your highest power of r would go first, your next r term would go, and finally your number would be last. And that's probably how you would see that written. Number 4 is an example of a subtraction with like terms. Again, you can hit pause and see if you can come up with the answer and then fast forward. But 7x, be careful, doesn't look like this x cubed, even though it's the first term. So we have to be careful. This 8x cubed and this x cubed look alike. We're subtracting. The coefficient's not there, but it's a 1. So 8 minus 1 would give us a 7. The only other terms that look alike are this numbers. We've got a -5 minus a -2, so be careful here. We'll end up with a -3. And I've got what kind of term floating around? This 7x that doesn't combine to anything else, and we just put that in our answer. These problems with product, when we talk about multiplying through, typically you will use the distributive property here. The distributive property, remember, is just take your outside term and distribute it through. This is where we're going to use our rules for exponents like we did last week. So a negative 6 times a 2 is going to be a negative 12, and a v squared times a v will give us a v cubed. Take care of your numbers first. A negative 6 times a positive 6 will be a negative 36. A v squared, and we have no other v's, so we'll just have a v squared in our answer. If we look at and we just have a number on the outside, again, we'll just distribute this. A negative times a 5 is a negative 20. We just float the x on there. A negative, be careful, times a negative is a positive. And again, we just put our variable in that same spot. When we talk about a binomial times a trinomial, we'll still use the distributive property, but this time the distributive property will give us a lot of terms because we're going to take the first term and distribute through every single term on the one polynomial. So 7 times 6 is a 42. V times v squared will give us a v cubed. 7v times a negative 2 will give us a minus 14. V times v is a v squared. And a 7 times 6 will end up with a 42. And we have a v and no v, so we'll just end up with a v. Now we're not done, because now what we have to do is we have to distribute through with the negative 3. So you have to take the negative 3 through each one of these terms. I like to work vertically. So what does that mean? If I take a negative 3 times a positive 6, I get a negative 18v squared. And since I know I'm going to have a like terms, I put that right underneath the v squared terms so that when I look at final answers, those look alike and I'll be able to combine those for a final answer. When I talk about combining the negative 3 with the negative 2v, that's a positive 6v. And then when I distribute through, a negative 3 times a 6 is a negative 18. So our last step, these are a little bit harder, but our last step then is to combine like terms. What does that mean? Add them up. So 42, we have no other v cubed, so it would just be a 42v cubed. Negative 14 of these and negative 18 of these is going to end up to be negative 32. We're adding, so don't do anything with the powers. And 42v and 6v is going to give us a 48v. We have no other numbers, so negative 18 will just be in our final answer. Again, I would hit pause and see if you can do problem number 8 on your own, and then just fast forward and see if you get the correct answer. But you're going to distribute. So pause. So I'm going to take my 2a and multiply it by 3a squared. So I get a 6a cubed. A 2a times a negative 1a is going to be a negative 2a squared. A 2a times a negative 6 is going to be a negative 12a. When I distribute through, again, let's look at like terms. 8 times 3 is 24. A squared, so I place that right underneath the other a squared. 8 times a negative 1a is going to be a negative 8a. And finally, my 8 with the negative 6 is going to be a negative 48. So distributing and taking care of all 3 terms. Notice you should have 3 terms. Our last step is to combine. final answer will be a 6a cubed. 24 and a negative 2 is still a 22a squared. Don't do anything with the powers. Minus 20a minus 48. So I have a practice sheet for you. Do those practice sheets, then answer the quick understanding, and we'll go from there.